Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and today is Friday, August 29th. I want to continue on with a topic that I had a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, on the subject of evil. And in that discussion, I referenced a book that I've been reading by Paul Levy. And it's about the Wetiko virus, which is a mind virus. So I'll try to remember to link that previous conversation, that previous live in the show notes so that you can access that because there's some really good info in there about the Wetiko mind virus, which is evil. Another way to say evil, it's another culture's understanding of evil and the purpose of evil. And we go into a lot of depth in that. And I got some really, really great insights in Paul Levy's book. There was another piece to that that we didn't have time to get to, and that is evil's biggest advantage. And this surprised me when it was talked about in the book, but it really makes sense. And it goes back to something that I talk about in that live from a couple of weeks ago, which is at one point for a while, I wasn't really sure if evil really was a thing. I definitely had more of a love and light focus, and I kind of questioned whether evil really existed. And this is evil's greatest advantage when we don't even believe that it exists. And so, why is that? If evil can be so permeating through our life, through our culture, through our society, through our everyday, that we can't even recognize it, it's camouflage, right? It allows it to continue to permeate and to spread because nobody's taking any notice and nobody is doing anything to I the word that comes to mind is combat. I don't really want to say combat because I don't like the forcefulness of it. But if we allow evil to run rampant through our lives, then we don't even recognize it. We don't have any impetus to do anything about it. We accept it as a normal part of living. And that's great for evil because it can just run unchecked. And so that really gave me something to think about, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so true." And I do think that we see this today. We see this in our society where we have what we could call evil or a mind virus or something that's working against our own evolution, our higher I mean, I always think of it in terms of evolution, where we start from a place of not knowing the truth, not reaching our potential, and we keep growing. We grow more into the truth of who we are. We grow more into our potential. Our gifts start to come online. We understand things from more perspectives. We don't just have this us versus them mentality. And that's why I don't like that word combat because it really is a very divisive way. And that is one of the opportunities. That's one of the challenges when we start to think about something like evil, when we think of it in the terms of non judgment, when we think in terms of unity, when we think in terms of forgiveness, all of those things, they might feel like they're like, okay, if I'm going to be in a forgiving, if I'm going to make forgiveness the forefront of my existence, then maybe evil doesn't matter or it doesn't exist or whatever. We might justify evil in terms of, well, it's serving a purpose. We even talk about this in the last live stream where evil actually can be a way, it can be a deliverance system for us to get to a higher version of ourselves, because it is through the facing of the shadow, it is through the challenges, it is through confronting evil directly and getting on the other side of it. There's an initiatory aspect to that that can deliver us into a higher, more evolved version of ourselves. So it's it's very complex, and so we don't. So it's important not to get into an us versus them, into a judgment, into a rejection. All of these things do go together. They're all part of the puzzle, but they may feel like they're contradictory or that they're juxtaposed against each other. And that's not how everything does go together, but it doesn't serve us to not accept that evil does exist. And again, because if we are in that mode of not wanting to see it and not wanting to name it or to accept that it's there, then it can have greater access to it. So one thing that is often talked about in terms of the societal controls that are happening, that I think a lot of people at this point really agree on, and I hope it's not too far out there for anybody who's watching, but the news, the mainstream news. In this day and age, many people understand and can see that there are strings being pulled with the mainstream media, where there are powers that be that are behind it, that are a very, very small, very powerful faction of humanity working way behind the scenes. So we're not even talking about producers and executives. I mean, we're talking about the people that they report to that are way, you're not going to see their names in any credits, but they're the ones pulling the strings, and they have an agenda. They have their fingers in other pies as well. They're pulling the strings in pharma. They're pulling the strings in oil. They're pulling the strings in all of these industries that are siphoning from our planet. They're siphoning from humanity. They're dumbing us down. They're doing things that suit their agenda and are not helping us to move forward as a species or individually. And in fact, they're working in direct opposition of that. They're wanting that not to happen, because if that happens, we as individuals and as a society collectively, we become more powerful and they lose their power. They cannot have their power if we are not controlled, if we are not buying into the materialist society that they're creating, this illusion that they've created for everybody to buy into. So that's one example of evil when that is used against us. So for example, let's just pick a random example like a war. Imagine if there were one or two wars happening on this planet, just hypothetically speaking, and that there were a very, very few people way behind the scenes, way behind the scenes. We're not talking about politicians even, but people buying politicians and blackmailing politicians, and then using those politicians because they have them in their pockets for whatever reason, whether they've bought them, whether they're blackmailing them, but they're able to get money from them, get the people's money from the siphon money away from the health care of the people, the education of the people, the debt of the people, the living standards of the people. And it goes to fund the obliteration, the genocide, the um, the wiping out of a culture, of a population, of a geographical location, so that they can come in and take that land for themselves, just as they've already done this decades ago. Hypothetically speaking, that would be evil. If something like that were to happen, that would be evil happening right in front of us. And if we don't see it, what are we doing? We're allowing this evil. We're giving it our consent because we don't name it, because we don't see it, because we're not willing to see what is happening. We're not questioning. And so that would be a great example of evil hiding right in plain sight. And also the detrimental effect on this planet of that insidious disease, that mind virus, that evil being able to work right in front of us, and we don't call it what it is. So I found that very powerful. And again, because it was reflective of my own journey, I've been there. I have been the 100% love and light. Let's just focus on the good. And I'm not even going to accept that evil exists. I've been there. And I believe that I evolved out of it. And so like I said, it really rang true, and it really struck a chord with me when I considered that the greatest advantage that evil has is when we don't even acknowledge that it exists. And so, we do want to be balanced. I don't encourage you to necessarily go down big rabbit holes to expose all of the evil that's out there, because that's very, very hard on the psyche. That's very hard for us to metabolize. It's easy to get kind of snowed under and to feel hopeless if we feel like we've got to see all of the evil and uncover all of the evil and show everybody all of the evil. I definitely don't recommend that. But there is this need for us to accept the shadow, and for us to not be afraid of the shadow, and to work with the shadow as it comes up, as it comes to light. And I do feel that we are in a time right now, as I'm recording this on August 29th, we're in a very powerful, energetic time. But I also personally have found 2025 to be a huge time of the shadow, of things rising that are hard to look at, but that we do need to look at, we need to see, we need to acknowledge. And it's also an invitation to move through these darker things and get to the other side, not to get bogged down by them, not to be consumed by them, but to move through them, get to the other side, be able to metabolize it, and and to be more empowered in that way, to understand, so we can make better choices for ourselves and for society. Remembering that we always have heaps of help on the other side of the veil as well, in terms of the ascended masters, benevolent star family, um, healed ancestors, and so forth. So you have heaps of help on the other side. And again, I don't recommend taking a deep dive and being like, okay, I'm going to find this evil. I'm going to snuff it out and I'm going to share it. And I'm going to, you know, it- it's a balance. It's a delicate balance, but it's not going so far the other direction, and it's not going too far in either direction, so that you can have a nice healthy balance and not deny that there is this oppressive force that is, you know, here on this planet. So I thank you so much for being here. I bless you on your journey. I will see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in.